أفلا يتدبرون القرآن أم على قلوب أقفالها
أفلا يتدبرون القرآن أم على قلوب أقفالها.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate. This is your presenter, Dr. Mamdouh Muhammad, talking to you today about reflection upon the Quran as the verse that all of us know, and even if we don't know, we remind each other. And by now I'm quite sure that many of us have learned this verse, this ayah, which says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم أفلا يتدبرون القرآن أم على قلوب أقفالها. Do not they reflect upon the Quran, upon the meaning of the Quran, upon the meaning of these ayat and verses, or do they have locks upon their hearts? Now today we are going to discuss and reflect upon one of these ayat, one of these verses. It's ayah number 9 in chapter number 15, Surah Al-Hijr. And before I do that, I'm going to remind you what is the meaning of reflection. Sometimes it requires deep understanding, discussion, trying to compare it with other verses. In other words, you make some sort of research so that you can understand it. If it means this meaning in this context and it means another context, that meaning, how can we combine them together to understand the whole meaning of it? What is the implication that I can learn from this? What does it tell me? What is the lesson that I can deduce? It's not just reading and reciting the Quran and beautifying our voices when we recite it and when we read it. No, it's much deeper. It requires a lot of thinking, a lot of reflection, a lot of pondering. This verse, this ayah, number 9 in chapter number 15, it says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إنا نحن نزلنا الذكر وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. Verily, it is we who have sent down the dhikr, meaning the Quran and the Sunnah, and surely we will guard it from corruption. Now, let's see how many emphatic forms in this verse, this short ayah. In Arabic, we have plenty of them, and this is the beauty of learning Arabic. And this was almost a must for every Muslim, so that he or she would understand the Quran by himself or herself without depending heavily on others. Now, if you don't know the language, you still depend on someone else to interpret it and explain it to you. It is very helpful if you learn the language so that you can understand exactly what is meant here by yourself. Well, still, of course, you need the experts and you need the scholars to guide you to this. And these are, for example, some of the things. If you know the language and if you know the emphatic forms, you would do appreciate the meaning of everyone. First, it says that verily, which is represented in this emphatic form, inna. Then it's added to the word we. Then the word we here, as we know that it is the royal we, it refers to Almighty Allah, and it is always used in the Quran to emphasize the meaning and to show you, if you have some doubts in your heart, that Allah is capable of doing that thing. As simple as we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does it by saying simply be, and it becomes. So, number 3 here, the repetition of the word we, as you see that. Inna, and then the word nahnu. So here's a third way of emphasizing, is repeating the word nahnu in a different form. And again, the repetition of wa inna Again, another we, an emphatic form here. Lahu is another way of Arabic language where you use the L, the lam, to emphasize the meaning. Twice lahu and then lahafidhun. And you will find even the verbs written in the plural form, again, to emphasize and to guarantee that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will keep it. Now if you divide this ayah or this verse into two sections, the first section shows you that it came to you from Almighty Allah. And then the second part of it, it's a guarantee from Almighty Allah that it will be kept safe and unchanged. Sure, period. And this is almost deeply rooted in the heart of every Muslim. And the evidence that we see around us all over the world, from the east to the west, from Singapore to the USA to California, from England to China, from South Africa to Russia, from almost everywhere in the world, we get lots of examples that, for example, very recently in Palestine, that there was a celebration of the memorization of the Quran, and it said that 20,000 people finished the memorization of the Quran in the last 2 years. Amazing. When we come to the whole number of the Muslims that memorize this book as a proof that Almighty Allah kept it from any type of a change, you will find approximately more than 9.3 million human beings from almost every corner and every village in the world. They already memorized the Quran. This statistic was almost more than 15 years ago. Now I'm quite sure that perhaps they surpassed the number of 10 millions. So this is a solid proof that Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fulfilled His promise, and it will be fulfilled until the day of judgment. So now again, the importance of this is that you don't find a verse similar to this in other books. And I'm sure that you as a researcher, as a learned person, you can check these things in other books. Go to the Bible, go to the Torah, go to any other book that you are aware of. You will never find a verse similar to this. You will never find a guarantee from Almighty Allah that He will keep that book. And the reason is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not keep the other books that He sent from Him. We know that we Muslims believe that the Torah and the Bible are from Almighty Allah, but we do believe that they had been corrupted, and this for a simple reason. The reason is that there will be a final message, a final book that will be sent to all human beings. All the other previous books were sent to specific tribes or specific nations. However, this book, which is the Holy Quran, had been sent to the whole world, to the whole humans, to Muslims and non-Muslims. And you can see by yourself when you check the Quran and you see the number of verses that begin with "O humans," and or "O Muslims," or "O believers," and "O disbelievers," even they are addressed in the Quran. Now again, I remind you, this is an evidence that the Quran is the final message for all human beings, and that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took care of that, of preserving it and keeping it as is without a single change. And it had been memorized by heart and everywhere in the world, and to our astonishment, we may find that 50% of the memorizers of the Quran do not speak the language of the Quran. Very strange and very amazing and very attractive too. And it raises question, how does it happen? It's almost impossible for a person to memorize a book that's not in his native tongue. But you find in the Quran more than 50%, if not more, memorize the Quran. Who memorize the Quran are not Arabs. Their native language is not Arabic. However, they do perfect the memorization of the 600 pages of the Quran as the Arabic-speaking people do. So, this is an example that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yes, kept the Quran safe, and we are quite sure of that. And the more you reflect upon every word of it, the more you become certain that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we know that, always keeps His promise. And we see this. To our astonishment, the memorizers of the Quran, you will find that they are the educated, even the unlettered. The blind people, some blind people, many of them in fact in our countries, they memorize the Quran perhaps better than the ones who are not blind. The handicapped people, even they have the ability to memorize the Quran. And we'll find other verses in the Quran that will prove to us that Allah made the Quran easy to be remembered. When you compare this, when you reflect upon this meaning, it tells us that this Quran, a book with all these specifications, definitely he will be beneficial for all human beings across all these years and ages and, yes, long time, since the creation of humanity until the day of judgment. It will be helpful to them. It will be valid for them to be used, for every place and for every time. Why? Because it came from the Almighty, who knows all the details of these ages and all the details of those different people who are living on the earth. He knows their needs. He knows what each one of them looks for in this universe and in this world, and therefore He sent a book that has complete guidelines for every one of them. An amazing ayah, an amazing verse, which will always be guidelines for the Muslims, which will always be a proof for the Muslims that this book is from Almighty Allah and it is guidance for all humans. A reminder to you, if we learned this, why shouldn't we be part of this process of memorization? Why shouldn't I encourage myself, my spouse, my children to do our best to memorize as much as we can? Because I will talk about this in other episodes, how important and how many rewards each one of us can get by memorizing the Quran. This is your presenter, Dr. Mamdouh Muhammad. I hope you benefited from this, and inshallah we'll meet in another episode. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
أفلا يتدبرون القرآن أم على قلوب أقفالها
أفلا يتدبرون القرآن أم على قلوب أقفالها
أفلا يتدبرون القرآن أم على قلوب أقفالها
أفلا يتدبرون